Hello and welcome to Lecture 4 on Social Psychology. Down with conformity! I love Savage Chicken and I love this particular cartoon of Savage Chicken. Now we're going to talk about conformity. Conformity is defined as the altering of one's behaviors and opinions to match those of other people or to match other people's expectations. So we're going to look at a couple more experiments, pretty large or very influential experiments in social psychology. That was my phone. Sorry about that. So, reasons we conform. One is what's called normative influence. And this is the tendency for people to conform, to fit in with groups. We want to fit in. We want to be liked by members of the group, and we want to belong to the group. There's also what's called informational influence, and this is when a situation is ambiguous. We conform because we tend to believe that the group has more information than we do. And, kind of a silly example is, if you're walking down the street and a whole bunch of people are looking up, you look up. There's no reason for you to look up. It's not like you're a member of an in-group, because these are just strangers. You're just walking down the street. These are a bunch of strangers. But you look up because you're assuming these people know something that you don't. I need to read about the role of informational influence and conspiracy theories. I'm fascinated by the psychology of conspiracy theories. And I have a feeling there's something about the informational influence that drives some people to be very attracted to conspiracy theories. Because the answer's out there. The government's hiding it from us, but it's out there. Okay. Please go to Moodle and watch these two videos. One is titled Brain Games, Conformity. The other is titled The Elevator Experiment, and you will find those in the Chapter 12 Social Psychology Lecture Videos folder. Welcome back. I really like both of those videos. The elevator experiment is hilarious. And it's so much fun when I go to conferences. Often college students will go to conferences, and there's always a group of students that gets onto the elevator and does the elevator experiment. And of course, we're all psychologists, so we just start laughing at them good-naturedly because we think it's fun. We're excited that they're excited about science. And it's just fun. And I really liked the Brain Games video, too. People had no idea why they were involving themselves with a standing ovation for a guy that just talked a word salad, who said things that made absolutely no sense. But that came back to the informational influence. Well, others in the audience who are standing up, they must know something more than I do, so I'm just going to stand up too. And I really like this Savage Chicken cartoon as well. Down with protests. Let's all protests. Now, social norms are expected standards of conduct which influence our behavior. Now, each of the groups that we belong to has its own social norms. Some will have very similar social norms. Some may have very different social norms. it is a good thing that the human brain can handle so much processing of social information. I mean, not just processing group membership, not just being able to identify people, but, being able to maintain an understanding of social norms for each group and how those norms might be very different between two groups. These are important things to juggle. Working with groups is critical to human survival. We wouldn't have survived and reproduced had we not settled into communities, had we not developed communities. Even when we were nomadic, we had communities. Research has consistently demonstrated that people tend to conform to social norms. Adolescents conform to peer pressure to smoke. Jury members go along with the group rather than state their own opinion. People stand in line to buy tickets rather than cutting in. There's that unwritten rule that you stand in line. Now, the chances of anyone in line knowing you are very, very low. And yet we still care enough about what other people think that we follow the rule to stand in line. Something I'm really interested in, the legal process, the psychology of the legal process. And so I watch quite a few trials. And something that I've noticed through the years is that judges work very, very hard to inform jurors and to stress the importance of not falling for social norms, for maintaining your own opinion, for having a sincere discussion of evidence, and continuing that discussion until a unanimous verdict is reached, or until the group decides we cannot come to a unanimous verdict. It takes a lot of courage to be a jury member, I think, especially on larger trials with high costs to the plaintiffs and defendants. Being a juror can be an issue of deciding someone's life. So one of the fascinating studies on conformity was done by a researcher by the last name Ash. And he did a line study. So I'd like you to go to Moodle and watch the video titled Ash Conformity Experiment. And it's in that same folder, Chapter 12, Social Psychology Lecture Videos. Welcome back. I love that experiment. Every time I watch that, I'm like, people, say what you think. You know that the group is saying the wrong thing. What is the risk in saying what you actually believe? And yet, this study has been replicated so many times, and the results come back so similarly every time. So in Ash's study, so as you saw in the video, there was what looked like a group of subjects. But there was only one subject. The other subjects were actually what are called confederates. They're research assistants that are following a script. And the actual subject does not know that they're confederates. They think that those other subjects are actually subjects. When each subject went in and joined that group, they would join 5 other Confederates. They would join 5 Confederates. But again, only 1 subject. But it looked like there were 6 total, including this subject. Each participant was asked to look at a reference line and then say out loud which of the 3 comparison lines matched it. This is not hard. We all know that 2 is the right answer. We all know that. And I guarantee you, every subject knew that. They all knew the right answer. 12 out of 18 trials, they purposely gave the wrong answer because they conformed to the group. What was really interesting in the video is watching the subject. They would be physically uncomfortable. You could tell they were physically uncomfortable and emotionally uncomfortable with disagreeing with the group. And they had to make a choice. Do I say what I really think, or do I conform? The results. When Confederates gave false answers first, 3/4 of the real subjects conformed by giving the wrong answer at least once. The conclusion is that we conform. We conform to social norms even when those norms are wrong. We would rather be wrong than be embarrassed. We would rather be wrong and doubt ourselves than question the group, that the group doesn't have more information than we do. Trying to combat informational influence and normative influence is very difficult for us. As humans, we are wired to conform, and that's not a bad thing. We tend to think of conforming as a bad thing. It's actually not. It's helped our species survive and reproduce. And most of the time, conforming isn't a big deal. What was so brilliant about Ash's study, this wasn't risky for the subjects. They could easily, there was no consequence to saying the right answer. They were sitting with a group of strangers, people that they wouldn't see again. There was no social cost to them to saying the right answer. But we are programmed to conform. Now, we also need to recognize that not all subjects conformed, because we also have the ability to decide not to conform. When do we reject social norms? Well, Ash found in some follow-up studies, and some other researchers in other studies found that there are a few factors that decrease the likelihood of conformity. And one factor is group size. The other is lack of unanimity in the group. If the group is unanimous, like they tended to be in the Ash's line study, most of the time the group was unanimous. Occasionally, it would be, 4 out of 5 Confederates would give the wrong answer. But when the group is unanimous, we are very likely to conform. When they're not, we are much less likely to conform. Groups enforce conformity. There is a social cost to not conforming. We have to decide for ourselves, what is the cost, and is the cost worth paying? We'll end there. Thank you very much.